All right, welcome back, everybody. We are back with 5 Minute Football. I am Mike Waxman from College Football Focus, and today we are welcoming in Lance Barton from the entertaining Always Talkin Ball podcast. We're going to talk some Big 12 football today. Lance, how are you?
Doing wonderful, Mike. Doing wonderful. Appreciate you having me on here today. Big 12, Conference of Chaos. It's been dubbed America's Conference, so I'm excited to talk a little Big 12 football with you.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of storylines. There was so much attrition with the demise of the Pac-12. Teams came in. The big dogs, Texas and Oklahoma, leave. Um, there's just all kinds of things to talk about. So I guess the first thing that we can touch on is which one of the new additions of the four teams do you think has the best chance to make waves, not just this year, but kind of going long term now that those two fixtures are gone?
Well, the easy answer, but also it's the truthful answer, is Utah. I mean, the Utes and Kyle Whittingham, they've been a model of consistency in the sport and college football for many years. When Whittingham took over for Urban Meyer years ago, kind of back in the early 2000s, except for a few years there, the Utes have been again model of consistency. I mean, the last 9 years, throwing out the COVID year, in Utah has had 7 years of at least 7 of 9 years of at least winning 9 games. And, last year they had a few injuries that were key injuries, quarterback position with Cam Rising and some other skill position players on offense. I mean, they were plugging in defensive players to run the Wildcat on offense. But the previous 2 years, they were back-to-back Pac-12 champs when they actually had their QB there. And I know that Kyle Whittingham, Utah has named a head coach in waiting with the defensive coordinator, Morgan Scalley. And usually when that happens, that kind of means that the head coach is possibly kind of on his last leg. Don't know that for sure, but I believe that as long as Whittingham or one of those coordinators, Andy Ludwig or Morgan Scalley, the DC, as long as one of those guys are in charge of that program, I think you can count on the Utes being just a model of consistency with how they do things there.
Yeah, they seem to be the team best equipped just because they were the least Pac-12 team of all of the Pac-12. They were physical.
Yep.
A lot of the Pac-12 is flash and big plays, and they were just let's line up and let's just knock you off the ball and let's play sound fundamental football. So I've always loved Kyle Whittingham. I think that he is criminally underrated when you see lists of coaches that are the best in college football. He's always down around 9 or 10, and I think he should be higher than that. So moving on to the next thing with Texas and Oklahoma gone, and Utah could be a candidate, but who holds the power, I guess, of the mainstays? I mean, Mike Gundy's been around forever. Kansas State is doing some great things with Chris Kleiman. You've got some other teams maybe coming up. Who do you think now kind of holds the power or would be the face of the conference with Texas and Oklahoma gone to the SEC?
Yeah, well, just on that, I don't mean to upset any Texas fans here, but that's always the narrative that Texas kind of ruled the Big 12 as well. They might have from a money perspective and stuff, but Oklahoma was the one that was ruling that conference on the field as far as conference championships were concerned. I mean, Texas did not win last year. That was their first Big 12 championship game in first Big 12 title in 14 years. So, but with those two teams gone, I mean, you kind of touched on it just a second ago with a couple of those teams, but I'm going to say that Oklahoma State, that's a team that doesn't get mentioned as for the just the consistency that Mike Gundy has had. I mean, again, they're another one that in the last 9 years they've had 5 double-digit win seasons. They played for the Big 12 championship game last year. Chris Kleiman, since he came from North Dakota State to Kansas State, I mean, again, he won multiple national championships in North Dakota State. It was 69-6 at North Dakota State. Well, he's continued that at K-State, where it's a tough place to try to recruit in today's NIL transfer portal world. Chris Kleiman has found a way to do more with less, kind of like you said a minute ago with Kyle Whittingham. I mean, Kleiman's been throwing out the COVID year. K-State's won 8, 8, 10, and 9 in 4 years. Again, very consistent. So I'm going to say Oklahoma State, Kansas State. I mean, Utah has a chance as well. I'm just a little concerned with Utah again. If Whittingham were to leave here in the next couple of years, what does that Utah team look like? We don't know what a Utah team without Kyle Whittingham is going to look like. But a team that could make some noise here, that could come on fast in this new age of NIL and the transfer portal era, just where they're located, geographically as well, that's UCF. UCF is, in my opinion, could be a sleeping giant in the Big 12 conference, as far as the Big 12 conference is concerned. Getting the type of athletes and the players that they can just get within about a 4-hour radius around the Orlando, Florida area. And I mean, we saw how good they were when they were in the group of 5 last year. The 4 teams that came to the Big 12 from the group of 5 and BYU from the independent, they all struggled, but UCF was the most successful of those 4 teams and was the most well-equipped. I mean, they beat the brakes off of Oklahoma State down in Orlando. They went to Norman and played Brent Venables and the Sooners off their feet at Oklahoma. They did everything but win that game on the scoreboard. So I think UCF is a team that could, going forward, you could see start making some noise in the Big 12 and could become that next Big 12 power.
Yeah, and they definitely are in the footprint area to be successful. I mean, most of the Big 12 for the longest time was concentrated in the Midwest, Kansas,
Yes.
Oklahoma, Texas, but they're in, if not the most fertile recruiting area in America, one of.
Agreed.
Moving on to some sleeper teams. I see people talking a lot about Iowa State. I see people talking about Joey McGuire and Texas Tech. You can see on my head, I have the Arizona Wildcats. I actually have them winning the league and making the college football playoff this year under Brent Brennan.
They're
I
down.
actually think that was as good of a hire. If you were going to lose Jed Fish, Brent Brennan is an offensive guy. Retaining Noah Fafita and Tet McMillan, I think, was huge for them. But what do you think? Who might be 1 or 2 sleeper teams in the Big 12 that people aren't talking enough about?
Hey, I like that call on Bear down there with Arizona. I agree. Brent Brennan was a solid hire. Well, I just mentioned a minute ago, I'll just briefly say it again. UCF, they're plus 800 to win the Big 12 championship this year. Those odds are at FanDuel. They got a win total of 7.5 as well. I mean, Gus Malzahn, we saw at Auburn when he can have a legit dual threat quarterback, a big physical dual threat quarterback like a KJ Jefferson who just transferred in from Arkansas. That with the with the fact that they've got Penny Boone who transferred in from Toledo. Penny Boone transferred Toledo to Louisville, then from Louisville to UCF. He rushed for over 1,000 yards last year at Toledo. R.J. Harvey rushed for over 1,000 yards for UCF last year. Those 3 together, that 3-headed monster in the backfield together, UCF is going to run and run and run for all kinds of yardage this year in that Gus Malzahn offense. And Kelly Ford from K Ford Ratings has their schedule set up very nice as well. They're 13th ranked strength of schedule in the conference out of 16 teams. They avoid Kansas State. They avoid Oklahoma State. They avoid Texas Tech. They play some of the lower tier teams in the conference like Cincinnati, BYU, Arizona State, and yes, Colorado. Those 4 teams are picked to finish kind of in the bottom tier of the conference. They play all 4 of those teams. So their schedule sets up nice. I like what they've got in the backfield. So I think UCF at plus 800 is a solid pick and a really big long shot as far as odds-wise. I don't understand why their odds are this low. Maybe I'm missing something here. But this team won 9 games last year, and that's West Virginia. Neil Brown and West Virginia, plus 1,600. In a conference that's just wide open with a lot of teams that are, pretty close together. I just think plus 1,600 is way too much, far as long shot odds wise, to give West Virginia a team that's not that far off from teams that are behind us. I think West Virginia, they finished 3rd in the nation last year in rushing. They returned all of that production in quarterback Garrett Green and running backs Jaheim White and C.J. Donaldson. Their schedule's a little tougher than what UCS was, but West Virginia is a team I think that'd be worth taking a shot at plus 1,600 odds to compete for a Big 12 championship.
Yeah, and I think we'll know a lot about them right out of the gate when they play Penn State. If that is a
Absolutely.
close game or if West Virginia somehow pulls that one out, then watch out for the Mountaineers. I love that running back duo of White and Donaldson. I also love the R.J. Harvey, Penny Boone, and I agree. Gus Malzahn loves to run, but he loves to play tempo, and he's going to try to get the mismatch on the offensive side of the ball. I guess the last thing, and maybe the first thing for a lot of casual people who follow the Big 12, Coach Prime and Colorado. They're kind of back to their natural fit. The Big 12 was always a better fit for them than the Pac-12 was. They turned some heads last year with their opening season exploits, but then they sort of faded because they didn't have the depth. They seem to have a little bit better a team this year. I think their ceiling is 6-6. I see people saying that they're an 8-win team. Do you think Colorado fans will be disappointed if they are just thinking bowl eligibility? That's what I kind of think the ceiling is.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Colorado fans should, because of how awful they were before Prime, and this bunch got there to Colorado. Their expectations should be okay with making a bowl game. But to answer your question, I don't think they will be just okay with just making a bowl. I do think that Colorado fans and fans that have jumped on the Colorado bandwagon that weren't Colorado fans before, they want to see this Buffs team get to like that 8 or 9 win mark. And I mean, the skill position that Colorado has, it's legit. Skill
Yeah.
position wise, the receiver position, quarterback with the Shadur Sanders, they've got 4 or 5 receivers that seriously, if you put them in Ohio State uniforms or Oregon uniforms, Texas, etc.,
Mhm.
they would be talked about as amongst the top 2 or 3 skill position units in the country. But their line of scrimmage play, we have no idea what it's going to be like because, again, once again, they've completely revamped it through the portal. I don't know how much depth they're going to have on the offensive and defensive lines. The schedule makers in the Big 12 did Colorado zero favors with their
Yeah.
schedule, and they got one of the toughest conference schedules, period. And I just think the body blows of that schedule, plus they play in Lincoln at Nebraska, a very physical Matt Rule Nebraska team. They play at Colorado State. We saw how highly contested that game was against Jay Norvell's Ram squad last year. And they open up with the legendary FCS squad in North Dakota State. And
Mhm.
North Dakota State, yeah, they've made coaching changes, etc. But they're going to play a very physical line of scrimmage type brand of football. So I just don't know that they can hold up across that entire schedule at the line of scrimmage. Again, I think they're going to have some of the same issues that they had last year and not be able to handle all that physicality.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing with them. I agree with you. The skill guys are really good. Secondary's pretty good. But at the FBS level, you not only need to have talent, but need to have depth.
Yeah,
Their starting five on the offensive line, I think, is better. But
I
going
agree.
to that second and third guy, that's an area where guys are hurting their knees and getting sprains. When they have
Mm-hmm.
to go to the second guy, is there a drop off? So they're going to be counting on a lot of young guys this year, and that's always a dicey proposition up front. Um, but hey, great talking with you, Lance. If people want to reach out to you on social media, what are your handles and what is maybe your website address?
All right. So we don't actually have like an actual website, but you can find our podcast, Always Talkin Ball podcast. You can find us on YouTube at Always Talkin Ball podcast. We're also on Apple and Spotify. We're on Twitter, on X at Always Talk Ball. And my personal Twitter X handle is at Lance Barton 15.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. It was great chopping it up with you. Maybe we can talk during the season. We can kind of revisit some of the Big 12 or maybe something else.
Absolutely, Mike. I really appreciate you having me on, man.
All right. Great job.